was talking about before we started? We was talking about the podcasting woes, right?
Yeah. That's the people don't like edit, and this is why I'm not in the podcasting yet. Like I have a lot of recording attempts, but we haven't released anything yet. So let's see.
Makes it so tough. But other than that, how you been?
Good. Just came back from Munich. I was there for like a work trip. But other than that, it's all good. We got a puppy recently, like a small dog.
Oh, check you out! Congrats.
It sounds fun, but at the end of the day, like it doesn't know how to go, like to toilet. So you wake up in the morning and there's like piles of poop everywhere.
Oh.
It's interesting, like I guess with the kid it's kind of similar, but here it's like at least it can walk and whatever. But it's kind of fun, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, dogs are interesting because like sometimes a dog doesn't complete it's like unaware of what is done.
Mm-hmm.
So then they poops and piss everywhere, and then it's just like wagging its tail, looking at you, and you're like, ah man, like you should know better, but you may not understand. Like
Yeah. I mean, and you cannot be angry to this, like a different being, right? Like somehow I think with the person, it's maybe you can be more angry to a child because you think that it would be capable to understand or whatever. And here is like, that's it.
It's like that's it, it's over. But so you was out in Munich. How was Munich in general? I mean,
I used to live there for 5 years. Now it has somehow happened that I have like a office job that requires me sometimes to come there. Have you been?
Yeah, I've been to Munich once. Yeah.
It's like everybody in Germany say it's not Germany really, but for me it's like this touristic kind of Germany. It's very quiet, very like safe. People like it's amazing at summers, but it's kind of boring. Like it's a little bit of a like comparing to Berlin, it's very posh. Like people there work at the good jobs, earning like money and like driving beautiful cars, whatever, but it's kind of all like in one direction. And if you want to do something else, it's not so much like for you to do there. But yeah, I used to live there for 5 years and then I moved to Berlin.
Wow, so that's the first place you moved to?
Yeah. It was like first place I moved out from Russia, right? Like, and I was really trying to, like integrate to a German society, like I wanted to find like German friends and all this kind of stuff, like, and it's, I gave up like by now. But yeah.
Wow, that's I mean, I hear a lot of stereotypes about making friendships in Germany, and that is difficult. Is that true?
I guess partially yes, but also you're like like when you're in your 30s or when you're already over, like I was 25 at that time, and I think when you move at that place and you're not in the university, it's already hard to find friends. Like people have their own life already, so they have to integrate maybe you in your life. So it's like, and then if you go in, you have to have an in,
right.
like for friendship, like. So, for example, I have an in with a lot of comedians because we do comedy, right? But for Germans, it's, like you have to have a hobby or something, I think, like, for example, hiking. Or, I don't know, like a cycling or stand-up paddling or whatever, like something outdoorsy, at least in Munich. So, yeah, like... I think partially it's through the stereotypes. Sometimes, like you want to have like you have an acquaintance, you want to make him like more friendly. You invite him, okay, like let's go next week, like somewhere. And he's like, yeah, I have a plans next week. Like what about the week after? And it's like plans too. And then you think, are you like shitting me or you really have like plans for the whole time? So yeah.
Wow, was it in most cases they had actual plans? Or
Yeah. They had plans. Like one time I was like, yeah, in a month I have a birthday, so I'm gonna invite you. And he's like, when is it? I'm like, yeah, it's like 20th of September. And he's like, no, I actually have plans already. I'm like, in a month already plan? I don't know, but maybe it's just I didn't get a clue that a hint that they don't wanna hang out with me.
Yeah, because a month out planning, that's far. I mean, that's boring.
Yeah, but I guess it's a comfort in their lives, right? Like I heard, or like somewhere there is theories why they like the planning, because it's the way to kind of fight the anxiety of the life. And before in Germany, like not, like recently, but in the German history, there was like a lot of changes, like a Weimar Republic, but then, like a Third Reich or whatever. And people were like very anxious about everything that's happening. And, like the way you kind of understand what's supposed to do, it's you make plans, like you kind of think that you like normalize the cows somehow. I don't know.
Normalize the cows. That's a good one. That's a normalize the cows. Is that a German saying or is that a Russian saying?
I just came up with it.
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna lie, because the way you said it, you have the accent. I was like, oh wow, is that like an old saying?
No. I don't think so.
Well, hey, now you're the first one in history to come up with that one, and now you can use it. There you go. Comes from Nikita, everyone. Normalize the cows, right?
Maybe, yes.
That's a good one.
But you asked me about this. I remembered all this my stories. I remember one time I have like a good friend, like he's German, in Munich, and he invited me. Like it was like a first time that the German guy invited me for a birthday party, and I was like very excited. I was like, wow, so cool, And then I came for a birthday party, like it was on Sunday, and at some coffee place, not like a bar. I came to the place, I go upstairs, and I don't recognize anybody. I'm like super anxious. I'm going back and forth. I don't recognize anybody. I'm writing, like I go downstairs, I'm writing to the other guy who's supposed to be there as well. I'm like, like, are you there? Like I don't recognize anybody. And he's like, it's in a week. So I was like so excited, and also like in my head I came 1 week earlier, like to a birthday party.
So did you leave or did you stay?
Yeah, no, I looked at people looked at me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna leave, and then, so I left. But that was like I really wanted to go to that party,
Did you actually go to it eventually?
I got sick afterwards. Yeah.
Oh, damn. So, okay, before we go further, if you could tell the people, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
So I'm Nikita Kha. I'm like a stand-up comedian, part-time producer of stand-up shows and etc. And also part-time office worker. I'm originally from Russia, but I'm coming like from eastern part, from Siberia, right? Like my region is very close to Mongolia, right? Like, so I'm actually natively Siberian. I never, my parents were born in Russia, live in Russia, but it's like the region where people, like Asians basically in Russia.
Okay. Wow. So, and with, so you grew up in Russia?
Yeah. My whole life, until 2015 when I moved to Germany. I was living in Russia, right? Yeah, but like first it was in Siberia, in this region, until like high school, and then in the university I was in Moscow.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And how was it growing up in Siberia region or that area?
Oh, nice. I mean, like, I guess the childhood overall is, whenever you live, it's kind of nice, like, because we're young, carefree, and at least for me, right? And it's a nice, cool region, like whatever people think of Siberia. What do you think of Siberia when you like hear this?
Cold, gulag. That's pretty much what I know. Yeah, cold, gulag, and people eat cold fish out there that they eat, and they make it in different ways.
Okay. Well, I mean, there was a little bit of gulag, I think, but like my region, it's Siberia is quite huge, right? Like, and like the eastern part of Russia is quite huge, and I was actually on the southern part of Siberia, and we had like a very warm winter, so it's like plus 30 degrees and minus 30 degrees in the winter. So it's like, like it's called highly continental climate, I think, like, so it's real winters, real summers. It's quite nice.
Wow. So hold on. So it's 30 degrees Celsius in the wintertime?
Minus 30.
Oh, minus 30. Okay.
In the winter, and plus 30 in summer. So it's like all 4 seasons,
I mean, so then the attire you guys have out there, the clothing must be serious.
Yeah. Sometimes, like during the winter, you have to wear like 2 pair of pants, for example. And like when we had like a physical education in school. It was like sometimes you can go skiing or ice skating, this kind of stuff. We were drinking vodka before that.
So vodka is a thing, definitely.
I guess yes. I think less right now, but I just remember the times when we had like a ice skating lesson, and there was like one time we bought like a bottle of vodka for like 5-6 people. We drank before it, and we had like fun. But it's not like that everybody drinking it and etc. And also I stopped drinking it for a while, but yeah.
Yeah, damn vodka. Yeah, vodka. Why? You said skiing. Ice
Yeah,
skating.
So I think one day a week it was skiing, and other week it was ice skating.
Wow, strong country for you guys to drink vodka and then just be skiing or ice skating. That is interesting. So okay, you go up there and it's very cold, very hot at the same time. What were some of the things that I guess because you guys share borders with other countries and stuff, right?
Yeah, so like this, we like our region is very close to Mongolia, right? But we didn't had like a big, I guess, connection to Mongolia. I've been a couple of times there for like summer trips, right? But it's not like that there was like people from Mongolia that often, right? Like, but I don't know, like to describe you from the outside, right? Like I guess whenever people imagine Russia, it's usually like a Slavic people, like white-looking dudes and stuff, right? But mostly, I think like 50% it was like Asian population, which is like local people, which is me, like Buryats. It's like very close to Mongolians and Russians, right? Like so it was 50-50. And like before I moved to Moscow, I never really had like maybe like a kind of a discrimination situation, right? Like so maybe I didn't know what like racism really is, or I don't know, like so that was kind of cool, I think. Yeah,
I mean that is something that's, I won't say different, but you don't really, it's not portrayed, say, in the media in terms of like that 50% you mentioned in that Siberia region. So half is you said Slavic, from like Slavic background, the half from Buryat. Yeah, Buryat, right?
Yeah.
That there's nothing happening there to what somebody may assume, like, oh, okay, I don't know, there's some tensions and stuff, but it sounds like it was cool for the most part. Like,
I guess so, right? Like there is like, like if we go deep dive into some different histories, Soviet Union was fucked up, man, right? Like it was just a lot of disregard for like different cultures. Like there is a propaganda picture of like all people being together, like all nations being friends with each other inside and etc. In reality, there was like mass deportation of one tribe to like outside to Siberia, actually, right? Then there was like just basically big distribution for like some big projects of like Russians, around Russia overall, right? Like why there is like 50% of Russian population there is because of the Soviet Union. A lot of people moved out there, partially forcibly, partially because like there is jobs there and etc. So like there is this story. And we had like some museums of also people that even before like a Soviet Union, like because of the religion, they were sent to Siberia, for example, right? Like, or somebody like was doing a revolution and then they were sent to again our region. So there is like museums dedicated to this, but it's almost like it's just nothing kind of saved. It's just like that happened some time ago and now it's like this.
So would you say that what bonded people was just kind of like the kind of that force movement, let me just say, not force movement, but basically either, I don't know if you call it deporting or so, because it's like in the country, right? But like basically mass shifts in society in which like you moving one group of people because of their thoughts or views or opinions and moving them across like all of Russia to some other place.
I guess so, right? Like like when it was just fresh, I don't know what was happening, right? Like, and I think there are some other nations or ethnic minorities in Russia that could tell more horrible stories and etc., right? For us, I think it was just that we were forcibly like it was a very long time ago. It was before the Soviet Union. Also, our region were forcibly, like somehow united with Russia, right?
Oh.
But it's like, like many centuries later, we're now here. We're now one country, and like we're making life out of it. I don't think nobody remembers, like what happened there. Nobody really truly knows what exactly happened. What we studied in school, it was that we joined, voluntarily as a nation, right? And in reality, there is like some archives and etc. that saying it wasn't like this, right? Like it was internal. They say it was like sort of internal colonization, right? Like while other European, nations were going to the other lands and colonize it there, Russia was just going to the east, and it was just, just expanding like this, right? So,
Yeah.
but now it's many centuries later. It's not somehow a big discussion or whatever. After the war, it started to be a thing. Like a lot of people rethought again their, ethnic attributions, and there is like a big discussion about this. But yeah.
Okay, that's interesting, and that's also important to talk about too, because like, things that happened centuries ago, and that you wasn't born.
Yeah.
You was born recently, in the context of centuries, right?
Yeah.
So it's a point where it's like, look, it is what it is right now, and this
Yeah.
is what I'm dealing with, and whatever happened centuries ago, or even multiple decades ago, it's kind of like, I'm just trying to figure out for today and tomorrow.
Yeah, but so for example, like one kind of interesting thing is like my name is Nikita, right? Like it's actually a Russian name, so it's like a Slavic name, and it's not from like my tribe, right? Like it's not like a ethnic name, right? And I was actually named after my grandfather, right? Like so it started that time ago, and my grandfather he was named like this because at that point of time, like my father told me, right, like there was a Russian Orthodox church, and they were giving money and maybe some like cattle for the people who would be, going to the Orthodox church and giving like the Russian names, and this is why, like in my kind of ethnicity, there is like 50% of my ethnicity has like Russian names, and 50% has, ethnic names.
Wow.
And and sometimes when you in the other outside of like my region, and you in Moscow, for example, you say like, yeah, my name is Nikita, and it's like, is this really your name? You kind of look strange to be named like this, so, and I'm like, when I reflect this, it's like it goes so far, like in the past, that my grandfather already have this, right?
Wow.
And I cannot, like say I'm not Nikita because, like it's the name of my grandfather, like my father gave it to me, and etc. So I'm like,
Do you get that more? Did you get that more in Russia or more here, like in Germany?
No. In Germany, nobody even understands that this, like it's like another layer now, right? Like because nobody really understands that it's a really Russian name, right? Like now they think sometimes that it's a Japanese name. Like I had like a conversation with one German guy. He's like, yeah, so you're from Japan. I'm like, no, but you have a Japanese name. I'm like, no. I was like, no, your name is Japanese. I'm like, it's a Russian name. I'm from Russia. He's like, no. He was like so sure, and I had to
even ask.
Yeah, I'm like, because somehow it also happened. There is a popular Indian name called Nikita also, right? And sometimes people mix it up and etc. So it's like another layer. But like for Russians, they know that it's a Russian name.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. He came up to, he's like, no, it's Japanese. It's like, what? Why do you think it's Japanese? Let's dig deeper.
Yeah.
But no, that's I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that in terms of where the name originated from, because some people may have like thoughts of like maybe, because in certain cultures they maybe try to, I know in America sometimes they say Americanize a name or to do certain names so it makes it more palatable or easy to understand. Whereas for you, it's like, no, my grandfather was named this name, and then my father named me this name, so it came further. And then even the way the name change happened was because of the cattle or maybe the money the Orthodox Church gave.
Yeah, that's like how deep the conspiracy goes behind, like, and like reflecting on that, and like I was reading like about Muhammad Ali, like, and that he changed his name, and like he was like before Cassius Clay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, this was my slave name, and I'm like, I wish I could do the same in parts, but then like I don't have this rejection to this name because it's like from coming from my family still. So it's like, and also I am not as strong as him to beat everybody, like.
Ain't got no muscles to beat the name. Back to his origin, and then get your real name back.
Not joking. But that's kind of like interesting way to look at, and like you see this story and etc. Yeah,
that's wow. Okay, okay, and then also, it does add to. It could add to the conspiracy a little bit, right? A conspiracy of like, okay, like, well, the names out there, was it all over because of money and cattle from a church? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in history, those things were kind of point blank. They were just like, hey, we need new members, so money or cattle, what do you want? We know you starving, so come on, what you want to do? You want to keep the name, or you want to keep some fame? What you want to do?
Exactly. I actually wanted to ask you, like,
sure.
Your name is like, is it? Can you tell it a little bit? About
this?
Yeah.
So my name Nya is spelled Nya, and this means third son in my father's tribe.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's actually something where if I was to go back to Liberia, where they're from, and go to like this particular part in Nimba County, it's like a county that's like near the mountains, that if I say my name, they're gonna know how many brothers I have, because it means I'm the third son, right? And then also they will know the tribe I'm from, so then they'll start speaking to me in that language.
Oh, wow.
And if I don't speak it, then it'll be like, whoa, well, usually people with this name has this, because it's so connected to that tribe.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then if you go a step further, this is more goes on the tribe, is that they don't know what type of food you like. So you don't know, they would just be like, oh, okay, so you a Mano man. It was just, it's spelled Mano. That's the name of the tribe. They'll be like, okay, you like this food. And 9 times out of 10 it is, because you've been raised in that way, that expectation. So the food was just made to you because your father is from this tribe. So they all like this food. So this is the food you're going to eat.
Crazy.
Yeah, it goes very deep.
Man, but does it mean that there is a lot of Nyas in Liberia?
Yeah. Wow. I have an uncle. His uncle's name is Nyankwe. Nyankwe, I think is second or second son. First son is Se. Second is Nyankwe. Third is Nya. I forgot the fourth and fifth. And you got the same for women too.
Crazy.
Yeah, so you have the same for women. It goes down as well.
That's pretty utilitarian, like.
Yeah, we share some similarities.
That's nice. But like, that's cool. So when like I was in the in school and in university, I was actually kind of glad that I haven't had like a ethnic name. Like there is a lot of ethnic names of Buryat people, right? Like Buryatian names. And I was kind of glad that I didn't have it, because some people were bullied because of this, because they sound foreign to the people, especially in Moscow, like, and some of my friends, like one like a good friend of mine, her name was Sesek, Sesekma. It's in Buryatian language, it means flower, right? It's actually a very like beautiful name somehow, beautiful meaning, but it sounds very foreign in Moscow. So she had to actually say to everybody that her name is Sasha. Yeah, like, and I was like, first of all, I was like thinking, it's stupid that she does this, like I was thinking I would never do this, but then I also haven't had like this problem, right? Like I always had like this in somehow to the white people society,
Yeah, I mean, Nikita is very palatable,
Yeah.
When you have like an ethnic name, it becomes difficult, and especially when you're growing up too, like, because like a name like Nya, I got made fun of all the time. And what made it worse is that because my name only consists of 3 letters, so I couldn't come up with a nickname. Because I mean, what, Yan? I think I tried Yan. And it's like, well, you're not Asian, so why would you use Yan? and so that was out. Then AYN, but that's Ann, so that was like a girl's name. So then it was like, okay, like what is going on? This is back before. Inclusivity and everything. And I had no choice, so it's just like either Nya or Naya or Nia. Like, it was so many different.
Christ. Yeah. And it was back in States.
Yeah, back in the States. Oh yeah, I used to get made fun of. Because the sound Nya, so many jokes can be originated. Like you don't even gotta make a joke. You can just you can just make a deep voice and if it's not funny, like nya nya, you know, and then it's already like, oh shit, what kind of name is that? Or you could be like, yeah, you know, you could just change your pitch of voice and that can make the joke.
Yeah.
So it made it so easy.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I cannot imagine. So like I avoided this problem because I had like this you know like a white name.
Yeah, white or Japanese name. No,
Yeah, either or basically. Yes.
yeah. Okay, so from and what was the specific place in? Was it Siberia specifically? Or
Like my city, my hometown called Ulan-Ude. It's like also in a Buryatian name. It's called translated like a red gate. So it's like it's a Soviet Union name. It was given there, right? Like so, red, right?
Yeah, right.
Gate. And it's a town like it has 500,000 population, so it's actually a big city somehow.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's next to a Lake Baikal. If you know this, it's like it's deepest lake in the world, basically. Yeah,
Wow,
it's like 1,600 meters depth. Yeah,
Wow.
and it's very beautiful. Like the region is very very beautiful. It's nice. It was nice to grow up there, and
Okay, so what was the fun thing to do out there? Like, you know, when you're growing up?
what fun thing to do? Eat fish. No, I don't know. I think it was just as with everybody. You know, like sometimes you ride a bike if you know how to ride a bike. There was like, but of course, you know, like during the summer you go to this lake. You do some water things. It was very cold usually the lake itself, you know, like you cannot spend a lot of time there, so you kind of lay next to it or whatever. I remember there was like a lot of mosquitoes all the time. There is almost no mosquitoes here, but there it was just like always like biting in the summer, and it was just crazy, you know, like you're always scratching and etc. Fun thing to do, I don't remember, to be honest.
Guys had like malls or
Malls? No, man. I think like a first mall I've seen, it was like now they have malls, right? But first mall I've seen it was back in Moscow when I moved to the university. At that point of time, it wasn't like too big of a place. Like I remember there was like a very hip place in our town. It was called Kingsburger. You know, Kingsburger. So it was like a copycat of a Burger King.
Okay.
And when I was like in the second grade, you know, like my mom, when we were like some celebration of this first year graduation or whatever, we were taken there, and I thought it's the best place on earth. You know, like they had these burgers, you know, like they were packing it in the separate paper and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's just like, you know, in movies. When I was growing up, also sometimes my parents were going to Moscow for business or whatever, and they were bringing us food from McDonald's, you know, like, and it was already cold, like chicken McNuggets, cold cheeseburger and whatever, and we were like, this is the best, you know.
Wow, life. Oh, the simple delicacies, you know, a cold cheeseburger imported from Moscow back to Siberia.
Like right now, I think it's much better, right? Like we have even like an English pub bars and whatever, so there is it's a lot of things modernized, right? Like, but back at the time it wasn't like this. What else we were doing when we were children? Yeah, going to school, drinking alcohol, sitting next to a lake, I think, this kind of stuff, you know.
Nice, all nature stuff, basically. Nature.
No, yeah, in part, I think because there was not so much entertainment. Or we had like maybe two cinemas, right? So you could have gone to cinema. Like I think first movie I saw in the cinema, it was with my brother. We watched I think Attack of the Clones, Star Wars.
Ah, okay. Yeah, early 2000s.
But yeah, okay, it was one time when I was first time without my parents, and before that it was like a Godzilla, and I was with my parents and I couldn't understand anything, and it was like only one cinema there that wasn't like working that well, so it was like this, you know. And of course, at some point of time, my parents or my brother mostly got the PC and the game. Like we didn't have like a Nintendo. We had a copycat of Nintendo.
What's it called?
Dendy, it was called. It had like a, it had instead of a. Like it had like a symbol of an elephant. It was like an elephant boy in on it. I don't know, like, but basically it had almost all the same sort of games. But there was a lot of also kind of for some reason Japanese games. You know, like. Have you seen Shaolin football or Kung Fu football?
Kung Fu football. That sounds familiar.
It's a movie, you know, like where like monks from Shaolin start to play like a football, and they're like shooting it. Yeah. So it's like in this kind of style. They had like a bunch of games. It was like a strong people playing football against each other or basketball or whatever else, and it was like same characters doing this, and yeah, they had like some extra abilities to, you know, like kick a football real high or whatever, right? Like, so something like that.
Wow. Okay. So yeah. And what was the name? You said, what was it called again? Denji?
So the how do you say, like a PlayStation, not a PlayStation thing, was called Dendy, right? Like, but I think it was the copycat of Nintendo at that point of time.
Oh wow. Okay.
But then we had like a Sony, I think. Was it a Sony?
Like PlayStation?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a PlayStation. It was like what was before PlayStation?
You got Sega. You got PS1.
Sega.
Okay, yeah, Sega.
Yeah. So we played Sonic, for example.
Oh
right?
yeah, Sonic. Okay, so you had a good childhood, man. Now I believe you.
More or less. Yeah.
I didn't hear Sonic in this whole story, so once I heard it, then I'm like, okay.
All right.
I'm with you now.
Yeah.
All right. So then from Siberia, you was there. You grew up there, and then you moved to Moscow for school, for college,
for university.
University.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So since 2007, I was there for until 2015, and then I moved to Germany, and it was it's cool. Like I like Moscow. Like right now, I haven't been there since the war started, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a cool place. Like it's a gigantic city. And when I moved there, I think I had like a bit of a depression for a year because there was not so much sun, right? Like I have like Buryatia, my region is apparently like there is a lot of sun, especially during the winter, right? Like, and I think Moscow was more like Berlin, you know, like very gray. And sometimes when you go to school, you know, like especially in winter, you know, like you wake up when it's dark. You study for the whole day, and then you go outside and it's dark already, right? Like, so something like that.
Ooh, that's the yeah.
But it's a cool place to live at that time, of course, and but because you know, like I'm not from there. I had a brother living there already, and you know, like a community of people from Buryatia also. They were saying. Basically, the main rule for at that time, you know, like for you to walk around Moscow, you have to carry a passport with you all the time. Because when you carry a passport, sometimes police guys, they can ask you for the ID, and if they don't have you don't have your ID, like your Russian passport on you, they will think that you're from, you know, like you're a gastarbeiter, you're an immigrant, and they might detain you, or you know, like check your whatever, you know, like, and then it's a whole shebang, you know.
Damn.
Yeah. And I had to always carry a passport with me, and then, you know, like yeah, it's kind of fucked up, you know, like, because basically in Moscow there is a lot of also like Asian people, but they are coming mostly from like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, you know, like basically Central Asia countries,
right?
Because they used to go there for work. So all the Uber drivers, all the taxi drivers are from that region most of the times. All you know, like delivery guys right now for, you know, like Volt or whatever, local Volt, they're also from there. And most of the times, you know, like especially when these services became popular, whenever people see me on the streets, they were, you know, like thinking I'm, you know, here to deliver something. You know, like,
wow.
I work in the office, I go to this huge business center and etc. They say, yeah, like, are you here to deliver an order or whatever, like something like that. So this is where it gets a bit rough and complicated, and it was like pissing me off all the time.
Yeah, of course, I would imagine, because you work there, and it's like, hey, look, if I'm not working here, then all this would not be here. I gotta.
Yeah, and then, or I was just like carrying my backpack. I have like a sometimes big backpack to carry my laptop or whatever, and like I remember one time lady stopped me and is like, "Are you the courier?" I'm like, "What the fuck," So yeah. Here, unfortunately, like, and like it was, I do comedy in Russian as well, and a lot of my comedy was based on this, that like people mistaking me for that and etc. And now I cannot do this material here because here they're mostly like Indian, like, or from that region.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of Indian comedians doing this material, and I'm like, this used to be my joke.
you took my joke, but in a different country.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Wow. So you had a lot of different cultural shocks then.
Somehow, like, Moscow still, I think it's quite a diverse place. There is still like, there was zero, of course, like a black people, for example, right? Like, but there was a lot of like different kind of people from Asia, different kind of people from Russia itself, like, so it was all right anyways. But you kind of felt a little bit all the time that what I said, right? Like that people who are not like maybe white looking, they're mostly in the service industry or something like that.
So no black people in Moscow? Damn.
Well, I mean, I actually remember how I saw a black person back in my town in Siberia for the first time, and the whole the whole yard or a lot of people were just like staring like this, because it was like, yeah, it was some sort of student or like people, I don't know, like I actually don't know how would you end up there, like unless you are sent to Gulag, but no, but it's because I think the university in Russia, they were like sometimes friends with like some African universities, and there was a lot of exchange students sometimes. But yeah, not so much of black people in Moscow, no.
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. If I was an exchange student from Africa and they sent me to Siberia, I would be mad as hell. I'm like, what kind of look? If you want to send me to the Gulag, just fucking do it, all right? Don't try to. Well, you gonna make me walk the rest of the way? What's going on? What happened to this fun Moscow and the Russian dolls and everything? Now I'm in Siberia.
That's true. Yeah, I think it would be like a big culture shock for you.
Yeah, frozen fish. We'll never dealt with frozen fish. It's always hot. So imagine we get the fish.
Oh my God.
And it's like, yeah, so how do you heat this up? No, we just cut it. This is how we cut it. Just through the blocks of ice. What?
But in Moscow, there is like this university. It was one of the biggest universities in Moscow. It was very popular also. It's called Russian University of Friendship of the Nations. It's a very Soviet sounding name. And basically they had a lot of exchange students from like African countries, from Asian countries. So there was a lot of Vietnamese, so there was a lot of like African students. There was a lot of students from like Central Asia, even like Iran, and everybody who were sort of friends with like Soviet Union and still were friends with like Russia. They were studying in this university for some reason. Like, I don't know, I never studied there, but they were like where they had like a campuses and dorms. It was like a melting pot of like a cultures. And so I was living kind of nearby, and sometimes we were hanging out there because some of our friends were studying there, and we were like, you start to walk like from the subway station, and it's mostly like white people, a little bit of Asian people, and then like you walk more to the area, and then it's like more black people, like more Asians and etc. And then it's like kind of this melting pot in one place in Moscow.
Okay. Yeah, actually my uncle, he studied in Russia.
Yeah,
they did like an exchange thing Liberia, so he's top of his class. He went over there. And I actually have an aunt that's Russian too. So yeah, I have cousins. They speak like fully Russian.
Cool. Yeah.
Every time I'm in the house, I'm kind of like just like, okay. Yeah. How do you say hi? And they tell me like, I'm like, I can never say that. All right. How do you say hi in Russian?
Privet.
Privet. Okay.
Yes.
Privet. And then how you say bye?
Пока.
Пока. Okay. So yeah, I think okay. Privet. All right. Yeah, because I always think private, and then it just gets weird, and it's a whole mess. But yeah, I guess to your point, yeah, I also have family members that have done that exchange as well.
Yeah.
And you know, I think what they say the first year is learning Russian. That was like the whole thing. The first year you just learn how to speak Russian.
Yeah.
Then the other years are like, okay, now you learn what you're here for.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so you was out there in Moscow. A lot of different cultural differences. People thought you was a carrier.
It's a like it's kind of rough to hear the summary of your life.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry to.
No, it's okay.
Sorry to induce the trauma that happened in Moscow. But okay, so you had a lot of friends there. What are you studying?
Like math, finance. You know, like this kind of stuff. Like. My mom wanted me to go to this university in particular because she thought I will have a lot of money because if I will be like an economist, right? Like so, yeah. I still don't.
I mean, that's such an immigrant, not immigrant, but let me say a cultural thing that is shared amongst many cultures, right? In which the parents want you to go to a field in which makes money, and let's be serious, the money so that it can be sent back home so they could be okay, you can help me out, or have that thing of like, oh, my son is he's the big guy, he's the economist, he's the engineer, he's the doctor. So that's interesting to hear that.
I mean, yeah, my brother, like I have a brother that 10 years older than me. I think there was like two hip you know, like professions at that time for some reason. It's something related to a law, so basically like a lawyer, right? And the second one was economist, right? Like so something related to the economy, finance, and whatever. And he was sent to do the law, like to get the law degree, and I was sent to do like a economic degree. Of course, I had like some say in it, but it was like pushed quite hard. Yeah, and. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, was there a particular type of field you wanted to do aside from economy, or you didn't know at the time?
I don't know. Like, I think so. I had like an opportunity to go to the math university, you know, like so it was like a hardcore mathematician and etc. It was like one of the best in the Moscow and stuff like that. But I was a little bit afraid myself, right? Like, and when I was like somehow talking to my mother, and she's like, "Why are you gonna go there? You know, like who you gonna be after that? Like a math teacher? No, you know, like you have to go where the money is, you know, like to this university." And it was like, it's called financial university, so you know, like the name already kind of somehow hints that you're gonna have like finances, you know, like at some point of time. And as a result, I went there. I mean, like I still had fun. It was like I picked like a specialty there to do the math, so it was kind of nice. But yeah, like I kind of chickened out from this hardcore, very complicated university, also because, you know, like my mother insisted to kind of do the other thing.
The economy.
Yeah, but you know, like as then life turned out, the other option that I didn't go to. People from there, when they graduate, they earn a lot of money, you know, like because it's computer science, it's business, and it's whatever, right? You didn't know that at that time,
yeah,
right?
Right,
like,
of course not, yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, that was a lot of pushing from my parents. I mean, like what I understand, you know, like also when I moved from like a home to the university, I realized I don't know what I want, right? Like it's just mostly things in the school was pushed from my parents, you know, like that I have to go to good university, I have to study math, I have to, you know, like go to study musical school to study accordion. I was doing that.
Accordion.
Yes. Yeah, it's a whole different story also.
Wait, hold on. I mean, we don't gotta delve into it. That brings any trauma. But who pushed you into learning accordion?
My mother.
Wow, your mom was a very eccentric person.
Yeah. I mean, like
be an economist and play the accordion at the same time. Solve the global issues of money and currency while playing an instrument.
Yeah. No, but like accordion was while I was still in her reach in the school, right? Like, so it was as I think you said, right? Like with Asian parents, somebody wants it to be a doctor, but also there is like additional thing that he has to, like do the music or whatever, right? Like or art or whatever. And why did I go to accordion? Because we had accordion at home. And my brother went to the accordion as well, like, and before my brother, this accordion was belonging to our uncle or somebody else. And, like, only because we had this fucking thing at home, I was sent to do this thing, and I hated this. Like for 5 years, I was like hating every second of it, to be honest, like there were of course bright sides, but I was like, yeah, like there was like a high kind of wish not from my side to do this.
Hold on, what was the bright side of playing accordion?
There was like, it's a musical school, right? Like, so you had like a different subjects and subjects where I haven't had to, like play accordion, but like just sit and listen, for example, like a musical literature or musical history. It was like about, like what was the influences of Tchaikovsky, of Shostakovich, Mussorgsky, all this, like Russian composers on whatever. And you just sit, you listen, and you're like, you don't do this thing. And it was fun, like.
Oh, okay. So you had to try to translate it.
So, yeah. But I haven't touched it after like I graduated, like yeah.
You're a much better person because of it. From what I gathered, you seem like a better, well balanced person. Not playing. I think times in Germany will be tougher for you if you.
But you know how strange this was for me, like. Musical school that I went to, it was like split into two different groups. One group was like a Russian national instrument, so it's like a Slavic and national instrument. So there was like balalaika, if you know balalaika,
No,
like
what's that?
It's like a traditional Russian guitar with like 3-4 strings, whatever. Then there was like whatever else. Basically everything that like if you picture Slavic fest, Slavic folklore fest or whatever, it's these instruments, right? And it was like very ethnically centered over like Russian national instruments, and accordion is considered to be like a Russian national instrument as well. And I like was the only Asian there. Everybody else were like Russians, like like white looking people. And I was also partially bullied because of this, but it was also so bizarre that I had to study like this culture, while on the other floor, like parallel to this, there was like Buryat national instruments, and it was like everything kind of the instrument called yatagan, chanza. It was like an all like Buryat people were hanging out there, and I was hanging out with them, and I was like looking at them, and I was like, why I'm not with them, like it's only because I had this fucking thing at home,
See, that's why you're a better person now, not having this accordion. Look how much trauma it caused you. You couldn't be with your own people because of this accordion. It split you down the middle. You could, it almost conflicted your identity, man.
But that's so bizarre for me, like, because this was like my mom was paying money for this, like, but I guess they and why I couldn't pick like a different instrument somehow, or why they couldn't put me to the different instrument, only because they had like this thing at home, like it's just super strange, like that you moved into this apartment, there is this chair, a couch, and now like the whole couch defines your personality or whatever, like it's that was very bad.
Wow, that is so. Oh man, okay, well, that must have created some good character in you in terms of having to deal with that, get bullied by other accordion players. I didn't know accordion players actually bully. I thought accordion players are nice people.
No, man, they're all evil. They're all evil heathens, And, like another story from that time, like I was. There was also a choir, so there was like a subject called choir. We were coming and singing in choir, right? And I was so bad in it, they kicked me out from the choir and put me to another choir for like less educated or whatever. And I was like so upset because of this, you know, like I had all of these things. I said to my mother, I'm not going to this musical school anymore, you know, like I'm done with this, that's it, you know, like. And she's like, what happened? And she's and I'm like, I'm done. And she's like, what happened? And I explained to her, and you know, like instead of say, okay, I understand, you know, like let's not go there, she comes to me, she comes with me to the musical school. She talks to the, you know, like the teacher of the choir, and she forces me back, you know. I was like, it's not what I wanted, you know, like it's not what I wanted. And after that, like this kind of stuff, like I realized I never should complain anything about, you know, like my life to my mother, you know, like because she's gonna make things worse somehow, you know.
So now when we talk to your mom, it's just one word answer. Just like, how you doing? Good.
Exactly.
How's
like,
things? Fine.
Any problems in school or work? I'm like, everything's fine.
Everything's fine, even though I don't have a job. Everything is good.
exactly. I mean, like that's the whole mom's approach, basically. That, you know, like if I complain to her something, she comes and she solves it for me, you know, like. And you're like, it was a couple of times in school as well that she comes and, you know, like, and I'm like fucking embarrassed because of this, and you know, like, and she's like, you see, I solved now. Is there a problem now? I'm like, there is no problem.
There's
anymore.
no problem. Well, put my son back in front of the choir and give him an accordion. He's gonna show you how to really do this.
Exactly.
He's just in the middle choir.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know, again, sorry to bring up that traumatic, you know, experience with the accordion and second string choir. But so Moscow, you was living there, and then you moved from Moscow to Munich, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And what made you move from Moscow to Munich?
I think like a quarter life crisis or whatever it's called. Like at 25, I was like feeling I'm not going anywhere, or like nothing's changing somehow. I wanted to kind of try out something else, and I was actually at the job, and I was looking for like a different position in my company, just for fun. And then I saw that there was like a job in Munich, job in Germany, and I was like, yeah, why not? I applied. I got interviewed and I got the offer. I didn't really wanted to leave like Russia, right? Like I wasn't desperately wanted to do it. I mean, like in other podcasts, like more political podcasts, I will say that I predicted the whole political shebang, and you know, like because of this. But overall, it's just you know, like I wanted to try out something. I moved to Munich, and I was like, I was not convinced from the first you know, like couple of days, and I was like, okay, I give it a year. And then, you know, like I think, and I maybe go back, you know, like, and then after a year, it was another year, and like I'm still here somehow, you know.
What was the biggest cultural shock when you moved from Moscow to Munich, Germany? Do you remember?
Let me think.
Yeah, or just a moment. You know, let me not say biggest, but what's a moment that comes to you that you were like, wow, this is different?
What was for you?
Well, coming here.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I talk about it but a lot in some
Yeah.
places, but the biggest one was that how people follow the rules here. You know, that was the one that, because you come from America, specifically living in New York City, you go based on your own speed, you know, and you can do it in fast usually. So it's kind of like you make your own way. It's all about, I won't say all about you, but it's kind of everything is dependent on you and your energy and your determination and things. And that's how you get things done. So when, you know, crossing the street, it's like I cross when I want to. Whereas out here, it's like there's a cohesive societal thing of like, okay, we cross the street when this light turns green. And majority of people follow that. That was wild because not even one person, or you felt the vibe of like somebody was breaking a social contract when they crossed the street when the light was red. So you're like, could you be sitting there at first, you about to walk, and then you just feel it. It's like so strong here. You feel that you're breaking a social construct here in Germany, and you're like, whoa, what? Why am I feeling what? And you start questioning at first, like something you do every day, crossing the street when it's clear. Why am I feeling guilty of crossing the street? And then you see people looking at you, or like, you know, kind of like intensely looking at you. You're the only one walking. So then you're like, okay, maybe I should stop. And I think here's another one to add to that. The biggest one, I was with Eunice, right? I was with Eunice, was in Rosenthal, around Rosenthaler Platz area, right? So when it comes to crossing the street, right? We came to cross the street. we're at the light. We're ready to cross. I look both ways. There's no cars.
Mhm.
So now I was like, all right, let me go ahead and cross. And then I was like, yo, come on, Eunice, let's go. He's like, no, I can't. And I was like, what we talking about? I'm like, bro, there's no cars going like this.
Yeah.
It's free. So he's like, no, I just can't. But he was serious. Like he couldn't cross the street because the light didn't turn green to let him know he can cross.
My God.
And I was like, oh, because we're having a regular conversation. So, Eunice, he's very laughing.
Yeah.
He's another comedian for anyone who doesn't
Yeah.
know. And he couldn't cross. Like, he didn't even make eye contact with me. I never forget. He didn't make eye contact. He just looked straight. He's like, sorry, I just can't. I'm like talking to him. He's like, no, I can't. I'm like, oh, I had to sit back and be like, oh, shit, this is real.
I see. Yeah, like I also don't understand this sometimes. I mean, like when there is like maybe more than 4 people waiting for the red line, I'm like, okay, I have to, like fit into everybody so they don't look at me. When I'm alone, of course I cross, and sometimes you also stand with them and it's empty street and you're getting pissed because it's the light is not turning and you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? It's so stupid. But I remembered what I was, like mostly shocked about at the first. It's how safe it is. I was like, I was very into bicycles. So like my first big purchase here was I bought a bicycle to myself, right? Like it's actually the same bike I still riding right now. I like it.
Nice.
But like I was walking like first of the days in Munich also, especially in Munich, it's super safe. And like you go there, you see bikes that are locked just wheel and the bike itself, right? Like they are not locked to anything else, they're just locked by itself. And you're like, and my Russian brain was like, or like a brain of somebody who didn't live there, I was like, I can steal this one right now.
Oh, I'm with you too.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave this one. I can leave this. I can leave that. And I'm like, what's going on? It's like so unsafe. I like these people. I'm just like, I'm about to rent, like a van and just steal everything. Like I forget my job and just do this. And I was like, it was very, very hard to get used to it. That like sometimes you leave the phone and you kind of like want to always close or whatever. And people, they just don't care about this, right? And when I bought my bike. First time, I had to leave it on the street. Like I didn't have like a proper. I had a parking spot downstairs, but I haven't had like a proper way to lock it to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to also leave it like locked to itself. Mm. And the first night I couldn't fall asleep. I was like, it's been stealing like right now. I'm like, I have to go check on my bike, like I was like, what the fuck? And for like first 3 days I was like, I cannot, like I'm like, it's gonna be stolen like right away. Man, yeah. And it wasn't stolen. It's still with me, and I'm like, what the fuck? And like to kind of describe how ridiculous this situation in Munich is, that like a friend of mine, she has a bike as well. She lives in Munich. And one point of time, she's like, Nikita, it finally happened. Somebody stole my bike in Munich. I'm like, no way. She's like, yeah, it's not there. Like I'm now searching like eBay that it's got stolen. I'm going to call the police or whatever and etc. And like, okay, keep me updated. And then she says, I found the bike. After like 3 days, I actually found the bike. I'm like, what happened? And what happened, she went one time with the bike to a coffee place. She took a coffee and she forgot that she left the bike there. And she walked away, and bike wasn't locked, and it was there for 3 days, and no one touched it. No one took a bike. And there was even like a homeless person next to a cafe, and when she came, she's like, yeah, that's your bike, like it was standing there for 3 days, like you forgot it. And it's like so crazy,
What?
Exactly.
The homeless dude helped her with said that's your. Oh wow, that's a level of safety.
Yeah. And and she was like also saying to him or to the cafe place, like, why didn't you do anything? It's like, yeah, who's gonna touch it? No one's gonna touch it. And it's not like a shitty bike. It's a good bike. It's like an okay bike. Like even in Berlin, I think it would be lifted like very, very fast. But in Munich, it was like. It was also like a good neighborhood, but it was like, wow,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. When it comes to safe neighborhoods, it gets I have this joke or so about how coming from a rough neighborhood makes you very paranoid. So then when you go into a safe place, it makes you crazy because you just always looking for danger that doesn't exist there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like for example, you got the bike, it's not locked and you can't go to sleep for days. For me, I'm not gonna lie to you, having a window open and then going to sleep, I
Yeah.
will sweat to death first
Yeah.
before I leave the window open and just have it. Cause I'm thinking like somebody might crawl in, they might do something. I don't know how it is in Berlin, but it seems like windows are just open all the time
Mm-hmm.
and just wide open. I remember one time I went to somebody's place, came back, the window was just wide open. I called him. I'm like, oh, like your window's open. I'm like, yo, I mean, did anything good? Like anything happened? I'm looking around, make sure nothing was touched. And he's like, oh yeah, it must be the wind. So but yeah, man, you hungry? You want something to eat? I'm like, whoa, bro, hold on, wait. We gotta make sure somebody didn't take something. We gotta like, do they know where you live now? Like, I'm like thinking the worst.
Yeah.
But then I just sounded crazy. He's
Yeah.
like, hey, look, are you hungry or not? Like, if you're not hungry, just let me know.
Yeah, and also for me, it's I think in Moscow I never did this. In here, like here, you just like close your door and that's it, right? Like and you step out. And in Moscow or like in Russia, you have to turn like keys couple of times, so it's like really locked. And here you just close it and that's it. Like you sometimes even can leave it open, but that's like this again the safety.
Wow, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie. Every time I leave, I lock it. Even when I come inside the door, I lock it. I lock it even when I'm inside and outside. I'm like,
Ah,
I
okay.
don't, because it's so I don't know how it is out here. But you can like, there's people that pick locks, but again, you're thinking about danger that does not
Yeah,
really exist.
exactly.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But so now, okay, so you lived in Munich. Munich was seemed like it was just like a regular, aside from the safety that probably bothered you.
Yeah, it's just small somehow, like not so much of a. Like, I think it's also getting better and more international there, but it's also different kind of international. It's more like, I think it's super cool for a family, like, especially because of the safety thing, like you can leave your kids anywhere and whatever, right? Like, but there is not much to do when you're like a city person, right? Like, there is a lot of nature. Every second person is like into hiking or into climbing or whatever, right? And if you're not into that, I was into that, right? Like but if you want to do maybe like mic spots or whatever, it's not so much there. It's smaller.
Very small. So
Yeah.
and so obviously you're a comedian as well, or
Mhm.
not obviously. Well, you have jokes. That's all. You have
Yeah.
jokes, and you have a different take on life. So with comedy, did you start in Russia or did you start in Munich?
It's like actually a funny story. I was like always had it in my head. I was like a medium, I would say, fan of comedy. I was like watching some Louis C.K. specials. Like I have a fan of like sitcoms, like 30 Rock, for example, my favorite sitcom, and all this kind of stuff. But what when it all happened, I was like, it was a pandemic, right? Like I just started the pandemic, and during the pandemic, I was like for 2 months in Moscow, working remotely from there. And it was also like a time when I about to turn 30, and I had like again crisis, like I have to do something about, like I had like a work which was stable but nothing was changing, and I wanted to do kind of something with my life, and the 30 was like hitting me hard, and I'm like, yeah, like first of all, I decided that I want to move to Berlin, so I quit my job and I wanted to move to Berlin. And second thing, I was like just drinking very randomly. I was drinking beer with my friend back in Moscow. It was like already 1 o'clock or something like that. We were sort of drunk, and he's like, "By the way, I'm going to the comedy school like in a week." I'm like, "What's the comedy school?" He's like, "Yeah, it's the classes. They're gonna teach you how to do jokes and whatever. It's like a 1 month thing. I want to do it." And he was also in like a crisis of life. He was just got divorced, and he was like, I guess, kind of trying to find sense also in that himself. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do it with you. And I joined. I actually even canceled my plane back to Munich. I liked it so much, this process. I stayed there for a couple of more weeks. I had like actually so the process was like 2 times a week you go to like a room. There is like two guys, they give you a bit of a theory of how to, I don't know, write jokes, but also there was like a storytelling behind this. They explained what a log line is, like how to kind of structure it, so it's a little bit of a it was like a storytelling course, right? And for this month, we were like writing like our first monologue. And then the last thing, what you had to do, like a graduation exam, which was like a bar where we, like just telling jokes in front of like people. And these people, it was like friends of a friends from all who studied there. So it was like a very warm audience. And like I performed there, it was very well. It went very well for me. Like the guys who were teaching, they also gave some compliments. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a king of comedy now, I came back to Munich. I did a couple of mics in Munich as well. And then pandemic started, like back to it full force in Germany. I moved back to Russia for like a winter for a couple of months, and I was doing mics there in Russian. And then when I moved to Berlin, I started hitting mics in English in Berlin.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically, kind of, I had the education in Russian, but the first real mics, it was in English.
Wow.
Yeah. And at some point of time, I don't know if you know this guy, Dan Belkin. He's also a comedian. He used to live in Berlin. He we met with him on one open mic, like on a boat, I think. He's like, we talked, and then he starts to talk to me in Russian, and I'm like, yeah, you speak Russian?
Oh, Dan the Stranger.
No, it's the other one. It's,
the other guy.
Dan Belkin. He's from Canada. He has actually his family like a Russian Jews or Russian Ukrainian Jews, but he's Canadian himself, but he speaks Russian. And at some point of time, we started to be friendly, and like on a fifth time we see each other, he's like, we have to do like a comedy show in Russian in Berlin, and I'm like, this is the stupidest idea I ever heard. Like, who's gonna watch comedy in Russian in Berlin? And he's like, no, it's gonna be fine. It's all right. And then we organized the first one. And I was like very nervous because we couldn't sell tickets and whatnot. And he's like, it's okay. We're gonna call like 3 or 4 friends or whatever. And at the end of the day, we sold out like 2 shows at the first time. And we were charging money from the get-go already, right? And it was like, wow, and then we decided to do another one in a month, then another one in a month. Then the war started. There was all of a sudden a lot of Russian-speaking people, but also Russian-speaking comedians who left because of the war, or, like somehow it happened. And now in Berlin, we produce at least once a week, one show, but like a month, I think there is like 5-6 shows a month in Russian.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
And I'm like main guy.
Jay, okay, the main guy right here. Okay, the main guy doing it. What an honor.
Yeah, I'm like a main organizer. Yeah, but I also try to perform. But the organization, like selling tickets, putting on events, logistics, whatever, takes so much stuff. Takes so much time. You're like, sometimes I'm losing joy out of this, so I want to do less of it and do more of like especially English comedy. I think I want to do more.
Yeah, I mean, because like your style is very like it's funny because everyone from every different culture has like their style that's coming from their that's influenced by their culture when they speak English. So it's almost refreshing. Like as an American coming, I started in New York City doing comedy, and then hearing it, it's like same structure, the punchline, the everything, but like it's like a different flavor because it's like the culture is like, and again, it's new for me because I'm like, oh shit, Russian speaking, but then in English doing comedy, so the structure and the way it's set up punchline is like carried differently.
Interesting. Yeah, like I think what I noticed, like I was performing in Berlin for quite a while, then I came to Moscow at some point of time, and I went to like an open mic, and what I noticed that they don't like in Russian mics, they don't have emotions at all. Like mostly the way they deliver, it's like they're reading, like they read, and like the whole laugh is about the joke itself, like very, very quiet delivery, very, yeah, I was in a shop yesterday and then this happened, like and then there were of course like selected people I don't know if you know Sasha Dolgopolov. He's like very expressive and whatever, but mostly it's just like reading somehow,
Okay, yeah, because I mean there's some other comedians I know from different cultures that's kind of like just monotone, is very like that, which I mean again that's also some comedy in America too, to where people are just like a Mitch Hedberg or something like that. That
Yeah.
you know, he's kind of. I mean, you know, he had motions in terms of how he's looking down, kind of nervous. So you had that, but you know,
It's even I would say Mitch Hedberg would in Moscow would be like a very expressive comedian, you know, like he would be like, yeah, because he's like you know, like, and there you know, like, and here you kind of see it's a mix, it's cool, you know, like, and there it's like 90% it's like this. It's just I don't know, because maybe it's also young industry there, and I think some stuff changed already, right? Like, but at that time I was like, wow, they're just, you know, reading text.
so okay, yeah, just hand me the paper, I'll read it. I'll do a read along as you're doing the joke.
Yeah. Something like that.
So you got anything coming up? Any?
No, I think not. Like, I'm gonna do some couple of showcases with Chris. Like Saturday, I think we're doing some like a director's cut that he had.
Nice.
I don't think it will be out by that time, right? Like, but
yeah, nah. I mean, yeah, this will be out. It's every Tuesday that comes out. So this Tuesday coming up, it'll be one podcast, and it'll be the next week after.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I will do spontaneously for some reason, I'm gonna go to Fringe this year.
Oh, check you out. Okay, congrats on that, man.
I actually got to, like, I wanted to go, but I wanted to just do spots. But then Andrei, you know, like, he's a Belarusian comedian. He's going there with his show, but he's suggested to do like a split bill now. And yeah, we're gonna go like for like not the whole month, but like for 10 days, and we will try to do like a split bill show. Yeah, it's gonna be like interesting, I guess.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
And you excited about it, or?
I'm like, I was so tired from all other stuff. I wasn't really kind of looking forward to it. Now we have to prepare, and yeah, I'm kind of excited. I think it's gonna be cool.
Nice, man.
Yeah. Have you been?
I've been to the Fringe, but not. I mean, I was doing comedy at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know anything about how to sign up, spots, anything. So I just kind of went around just watching some of the acts, or just any of the shows, whether it be clowning, whether it be singing, whether it be cabaret, whether it be whatever. And then I met some comedians I knew from New York that were there. So then we were hanging out as well, like Max Whites. He's this guy, white guy, who's from the States. He does comedy, but he travels all over. Every time you see him, he's like climbing the side of Mount Kilimanjaro, or he's like doing something where he's like on some boat traveling in the middle of the ocean. He's like one of those extreme life/sports people.
Oh my god. Okay, like a free solo kind of guy.
Yeah, but he does comedy. Like, so he had like the whole hour. He did like the whole Fringe run of doing like the hour, and I went there. It was good. And, you know, just seeing him, it was actually, the Fringe is what helped me move. The Fringe is what helped me think about moving out here to Europe.
Yeah.
Because I just saw comedy in a different way. When you're in New York and America's, maybe in general, is that comedy is done in a certain way. The way you go up, the way you rise, how you do it is very like a certain standard. It's not as expansive as it is in, say, Europe and UK, and especially French. You know, a lot of people are, you know, you see some things in French where it'd be like, yo, what the hell's going on? But it'd be sold out. I remember this guy. I remember he used to play like this toy radio in the French. Toy radio, and then he's like singing and doing some other stuff, and like the punchline was always like some like little kid song or something, and I didn't know what. I was like, yo, what is going on? But like, in order for me to get in there, it was so sold out. We had to talk to somebody, like, hey, look, can we get in? Because like I know so and so, whatever. Like, it was sold out back to back to back. I'm like, why? I'm like, what is going on? I don't know what's going on, but this guy has like a fan base, and it's sold out.
Crazy. Okay.
So you just saw art in different ways. Clowning was a big thing too. Saw that was like very different in terms of how comedy can be done in an unscripted way. Like literally seeing people just going off the rails for like 1 hour, and it being like, to this day I still can't tell you what happened, but it's probably one of the funniest things I've seen in my life.
Crazy.
Like, I walked out of it like, what happened? That was, I don't know. Somebody made out on stage and didn't even know each other. Somebody spit water in the audience. Kept on spitting water in the audience, and people loved it. This guy kept on running around scaring people like through the curtains, like boo, you know, like doing that. So it was something that, yeah, Fringe. I think I might go to do spots, but
that makes me excited now. Yeah, let me know when you're gonna come. We maybe like intersect. I don't know, like if it's
I need to find how to do this, because I know lodging is like very difficult or something.
Yeah,
like
that's like what I'm figuring out right now. But yeah, I mean, like, actually, I wanted to, yeah, ask you why you moved out from
Yeah.
like New York to do comedy here. But you kind of partially explained.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to, I can go into.
Like for me, it's also I guess like on a bucket list for me, it's just go to New York and also do spots. But I guess it's tough, no?
It is tough, but I think it's important. I think it's important for every comedian to just try different places, just to see how your jokes will perform, how you yourself will be performed, and just kind of have an overall experience, like in you just as a person going to like a place like New York. You just going there alone without doing comedy. It's gonna affect you, like the tall buildings, what you're seeing, the way people moving.
No, I've been, like in New York, but as a tourist, so I didn't do like any comedy shows or whatever. I went just to see, like, I went 2 times to see a comedy there because like I was already a fan. I was already doing like a here mice, but I wasn't I still felt like not worthy of like I don't know like a scene. But we also were traveling with my girlfriend, so I didn't want to like take a time to do this. And now I want to really go on purpose to kind of perform. But like I was so how do you say, like, mesmerized by the Comedy Cellar. I was like on a Friday night, I think, showcase, and there was this guy there, like, just killed me, like Greer Barnes.
Oh, he's hilarious. That dude funny.
He's so funny. I was just like dying laughing. It was like so good. I'm like, wow, that's and I haven't heard him before. He's not that like popular. Like, he's popular, but like I haven't heard of them. And I was like, wow, that guy is just a killer. And then I went to Sam Morril Work in Progress show.
Oh, nice.
It was also quite cool. I was like, amazing. And I was like, yeah, I want to go now again and kind of do it. Like eat the bagel in the morning, do spots or whatever. But what I hear so far, it's like, yeah, you're gonna perform in front of like comedians, or it's a bringer show or whatever.
It's definitely. It's I ain't gonna lie, it's tough. If you started comedy here in Europe and you go to New York, it's like, how can people live just in general with this type of like deplorable standards or whatever situations you got to go through? Because with the mics you have to pay. That's one shocking thing. You have to pay $5 usually to pay. Sometimes even more. There's times where I pay $5 plus a drink, where it came out to $8.
Crazy.
For me to do like 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes.
Oh my god.
And so like I used to have a budget for mics. Okay, it's like $20 per week or something like that. If I want to hit up all these mics, or the free ones you do, they give you like 2-3 minutes, or they do something in the bucket, so you might have to sit there for like hours and like dig in the bucket. Yeah. So that. Second, there's usually nobody there. Usually comedians that are there. So then you're performing in front of other comedians, and sometimes like there might be comedians where they're not paying attention to you because they're thinking about their stuff when you're gonna go up. Some may not even just like you, so you got like all these energies you got to deal with, right? So you have that. And then third is that if you want to perform on a show, that kind of goes more into, I think in Europe is like better in terms of how you guys like go ask for like spots and stuff. But in New York for a while, there's like this thing of like not wanting to ask. Like you just didn't want to seem like this person. I'm like, I want to be selected. I don't want to be the one to reach out or something, which is weird and stupid. And me and my friends talk back at it. But those would be the three things I would say.
Crazy. It's actually reminded me of the time, like when I started the comedy here, right? Like, so my first experience was going to the open mics in Munich. And like I went to the first open mic, and the guy, the host, is like, yeah, we're gonna grab a beer afterwards, like with all the comedians wanna join. And I joined every time whenever I was at the open mics there. And I had like, it was my first open mics, and I had this illusion is like, yeah, comedians are very friendly, tight-knit community. I'm gonna be friends with all of them, and it's gonna be like this in every city. And then like I go to Moscow to do this, and Moscow I think is much more developed, like in a Russian-speaking comedy scene, comparing even to Berlin. And I go to the first open mic, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the green room or whatever, and I'm gonna be friends with all these people. And they were just like, like didn't even say hi or introduce themselves or whatever. And I'm like, wow, this feels like like very, very very bad, like, and I was like, okay, maybe I don't like comedy that much. I don't know. I like hanging out part.
Yeah, the hanging out part is yeah, even in New York too. Like if they don't know you, they're kind of like, who is this person?
Exactly,
If you're from out
exactly.
of town, there's already judgment. Like who this
Yeah,
out of town
yeah.
person?
And then, but when I came to Berlin again, I felt like, yeah, it was like a mix, of course, but it was still better than in Moscow, right? But I think also right now the scene is kind of developing, and now I don't know if you start right now, maybe people already less friendly than like it was like 3 years ago when I started or something, because yeah, you have your own stuff going on and whatever,
Yeah, I would imagine own stuff happening. There's gonna be some, when anytime there's art being developed, it's gonna have like certain cliques, let's just say, or different
Yeah.
packs of like, okay, people over here, people that do this type of comedy, people who do that type of comedy, that doesn't maybe mesh. Somebody that's been selected, somebody that has not, somebody's on the way up, somebody's on the way down. Like there's so many,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunately a sign of when things are being developed. Unfortunately, like when you start seeing those things, you're like, oh, things are being developed.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's partially good.
Yeah, it's being so developed. You can identify certain things as its own thing, or certain things that conflict with each other. When it's so open, it's like, oh, whoa, it could be, whatever. It could be.
Yeah.
So it's but I would say I suggest go to New York, just do it, just so that idea or that subconscious can actually be formed in reality. So that, because there's a lot of people that go to New York with like still, even as I say when I tell them, they're like, oh yeah, but I need yeah, and it's kind of like, this just needs to happen, like because the way you saying it is like not that. And even as I'm living here in Europe doing comedy more and more, I just realized like, oh my God, yo, what I thought was to be reality was abysmal. It was like just sad. Because it's like you go to these mics. I used to go to basements and sit there from like 6 to like 12, 1 a.m. to do a culmination of maybe 6 to 8 minutes of comedy.
Back in New York, you mean?
Back in New York. And I'm talking about sit there I come from work and literally sit down in this rusty basement, literally no sunlight, maybe go sunlight just to go upstairs or something. But you sit in this dark. Yeah, I mean, it's a good place. It's a great place. But now just thinking about it, it was just like a basement. It was like wet, and then you were just in there to just wait to do a series of maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And then maybe do 2 or 3 minutes. You're like, all right, cool. But then I want to catch the next mic. So then maybe you might go upstairs, walk around. But like you just sitting there all day.
Yeah.
And then usually around some people that some people that are just, because some comedians could be, life can be a little rough for them, and then when they talking to you, it makes your life rough too. That's how rough it be.
Oh my God.
But yeah, let me not to be the person to say don't go or to make you scared or going. And now you're not scared. You're gonna go. Because you already went to New York. That I suggest, yes, go.
All right.
Do it. I know there's us. Yeah, I think Dinera, she's going, right? She has the Russian. Yeah, I have a friend from Uzbekistan. He speaks Russian too. He does like Russian speaking. Actually, I think for the same guy. She's gonna be. Yeah, he lives in LA, and then he has his family there. He comes out to the East Coast. So yeah, there's many different things.
Yeah, but it's also like so we do the comedy here in Russian, right? Like, and sometimes you kind of feel. It's a dead end somehow, right? Like it's okay. You know, like you write more jokes, you get like maybe an hour or whatever. Okay, you can tour, but like you somehow think, okay, maybe you shouldn't, because it's the comedies maybe with more and more get so specific for the immigrants, like, and it might not work for like Russians because like nobody cares about the visa, Anmeldung, Burgeramt kind of jokes, right? So. And then you think you have to like switch back and do English one, like you and sometimes some for me would be like I wouldn't like reject it, but for me to go to New York and perform in Russian, it would be like, what, like it's strange somehow. Like,
yeah, you would have to whoever goes out to regular shows, they're probably going to speak just English. So you kind of have to facilitate that, or have like a big name coming in. They're like, oh, I know the guy, and then I see a lot of Russian speakers come. Because again, my friend, actually one of my good friends' name is Natan Badalov. Me and him actually started together in New York. So he speaks Russian. He speaks full Russian, everything. But he does it in English. I think that's how we started. 'Cause I didn't even know he speak Russian until a while. But I think one thing in comedy that's always important and sometimes we miss is that you got to know your audience or audiences. So then you know. So every big audience, every big comedian has an audience that they primarily connect with. So you can say, okay, Joey Coy, he's gonna connect with Filipino, people. So he has jokes like with the nurses, X, Y, and Z. Anthony Jeselnik, he's gonna go to a demographic of like say white dudes that are kind of like on this side. Dane Cook, like every big comedian you have, you can at least identify 1 to 2 audiences they primarily, and that audience is huge. I mean, that's what's selling out. Like a Louis C.K. Louis C.K. is going for mostly like white people that are kind of like, maybe, 20, not even 20s, maybe like mid 20s up to like their 40s, something, whatever. Right. But he's not to mostly women.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So but we know, and he sells out arenas with just that demographic.
But that's kind of sad also, like I understand this and it makes a total sense and it's the truth, right? But also with that, it's somehow that I kind of don't think that you then can make, like your audience, whatever you like, it's whatever you are already that, like will fit to your audience. So for example, if I look, like at myself, it seems like I have to cater, Asians, right? Like, but I don't want to serve Asians. I don't know, like.
No, I feel you. Yeah.
Like for me, it's also like a little bit of a trap, and I understood this also when I was doing like a comedy in Russian. Is that like I cannot really maybe connect that much with like a Russian audience because like they were from the same country, so there is a connection, but they don't understand the minority I in Russia, right? Like so. But my audience then is getting too small, right? Like, and with that also maybe I can less connect with maybe like Asians who speak Russian but outside of Russia, like Kazakhstan or whatever, because I'm not them, right? Like, and and it's kind of sad that I cannot say like my audience is white people now, like, and then I make jokes and they love me, because I don't think it's gonna happen, right? Like I think it's somehow there will be like still some buckets of them, but you have to then go look for Asians.
Look for Asians. You gotta. I mean, I get what you're saying, and like for me, like say as an African dude, right? Like one would say like, okay, well, how about you having mostly African audiences? And to be honest, most of my jokes are not because of being African. It's mostly just observational. And like recently it's been me, American, living, traveling across Europe, those things, and just general things that a lot of people can, but it's not African.
Yeah, that's also true. Like you don't cater them with the jokes, right? Like it's just you talk about your life and then organically it happens somehow, right?
Yeah, I think because even I was talking to Sid, Sid Singh.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's talking about like how he's a comedian who's Indian, but he's not an Indian comic, meaning that he doesn't have the type of jokes Indian people are there to like listen. And that's a thing that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, there's people that are Spanish speaking or say Dominican and they're thinking like, okay, we want to hear Spanish jokes. Like, hey, why you not speaking Spanish? What's going on? And their jokes are like not even touching Spanish related issues or topics. And people sometimes be like, whoa, I thought, your name is this and you're from this you're from this culture. Why are you not saying it?
Yeah.
But I think it may be, as an artist, it may help out in a sense of like knowing the audiences that you want to, audiences that it just is like, look, I'm a black dude in Berlin. I know if I put my face on a poster, they're gonna be black people coming out. They're gonna be like, oh shit, like yo, what? Like yeah, like of course I'm coming to you. What? I thought all shows are only in German or white or something. So to see that, they're gonna come out. And they may, and sometimes, there's again jokes, or I have things about like, race relations, being black and whatever, but that's not all of it.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be at least some that can,
for sure, and
just like an awareness, and whatever you want to do, obviously, don't have to be like, okay, I'm Asian, I'm gonna start saying Asian jokes, because then you're gonna feel like, they're gonna be like, are you okay? I mean, yeah, I get it, but you don't feel happy.
Yeah. Like one time I had this feeling that like there was one funny Russian-speaking comedian. He had like a concert here, and he had like a 1 hour. He's a gay comedian. He's like one of the first gay comedians actually in like a Russian scene, right? And obviously because of this, he moved out of Russia, right? And he had like a very funny hour about his life. But then what I understand is like 1 hour of all of these jokes about, you know, like he's basically you know, like LGBT kind of, you're like, okay, I get it, you know, like I get it. Is there, you know, like jokes about, you know, like you traveling in the train or something, you know, like maybe this somehow, like I understand, right? Like I think it's also that, yeah, you specialize it, but there is also some other stuff, right? Like
Of course.
yeah.
And eventually you have to change, right? I mean, because like people grow up, like
sure.
your demographics. There's comedians that used to cater to one group, and then they just expand. Either they grew up, or they changed, or things happened, and then you have to then adjust. And then it's also painful. So you have people that are big in their country. When it comes to America, it's like ground zero. Like I'm talking about, you're the biggest name. You're on billboards. You got paid thousands of dollars in your country. You come to America, there's somebody in open mic being like, all right, get off stage. Like, yep, all right. You know, yeah, let's welcome. I don't know his name. Yeah, what the fuck was he talking about? Next time we might have to close the board. You know, like weird things. You kind of like, oh my God, like, wow. Like I used to be the shit in my country. Now I got to start back to from fucking zero in front of people that never even saw $1,000. Like, it's a mind fuck. Actually, what's the name of the guy from Egypt, and he's married to the Palestinian woman? I forgot the guy's name. Damn, he blue eyes. He was on Lex Friedman. He was on Piers Morgan. He was arguing with him. I forgot the guy's name. He's a very funny, popular dude. He talks about things, politics, and stuff. I forgot the guy's name. Oh man, but with him, he's talking about how he was big in Egypt and everything, and people knew him even in America because how big he was in Egypt. Yep. And then he wanted to start comedy again, but in English, or I think in English. And the process he had to go through, he had to like bomb bad. And what was worse is that people were coming from that knew about him, that was taking like notes on him and like doing things of like, hey, see this top comedian? He sucks now.
Yeah.
So imagine all of that. And then you have to start from zero. And he was like bombing. He's like going into depression, this and that, everything. Crazy. Cause just imagine, he had a wife and kids. Wife and kids looking at you like, yo, what's going on? Like, I thought I seen it, but what's happening now?
Yeah.
But
same thing now happens with like the Russian comedians, right? Like the Dan the Stranger and Sasha Dolgopolov. They both like kind of big or very big in Russia, and now they kind of do it in English, and like I was helping both of them, you know, like with some concerts. And the problem here is also when they start to do it in English, and for example you want to attract a new audience, they are so popular and there are so many Russians that Russians come to the show, and you know, like you don't get the new audience, and then you still want to earn money. They both like a full-time comedians, right? Like, so you have to charge something for ticket, but you know, like a random guy, when he sees maybe this price and he doesn't know who's on the poster, he's not gonna come, right? So it's like also a problem for them at the moment. For me, there is no problem because nobody knows me back in Russia, so you know, I'm shit everywhere.
You shit everywhere. No, you're not. No, you may be shit everywhere, but when you get that accordion, boy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when you put you in front of a choir with that accordion, man, you be selling out arenas.
Yeah.
No. Before we kind of wrap up or so, one thing I like to ask, usually now this is a new thing I ask, is that you know, when you're someone who's living in a culture that's different than your original culture. You've lived in the part of Siberia you're in, you know, that you're from a culture that maybe you know, I think your grandfather or so, like great grandfather maybe originated from, and like as of living there and then moved or something. And then now you're here in Berlin. So you went through a lot of different cultures, you know, from like Siberia to Moscow to Munich to Berlin, and you've dealt with things. You know, you being thought of as a courier or playing accordion. What would you tell your younger self during any of those times, like some advice?
Oh my God. Like, I don't know. Hard to tell. Like, of course, there is like obvious things like invest in Bitcoin, right? Like go in crypto earlier and then leave earlier as well. But overall, I guess just like I think I would say make decisions faster and like do not hesitate somehow. Like I think when I look back in Munich time, like sometimes I think I stayed there too long. Right, like I had to move faster, and maybe I had to pick up like a comedy faster because I was like more afraid or something, right? Like, and you always have this decision, and then like when you do it, you kind of think I should have done it faster, right? Same thing. I think like I'm happy that French is happening right now, because if it wouldn't be for Andrei, I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it the next year, and now it's like happening, and I'm like, okay, it's actually like cool. So I would say all of the things before, like it took a bit of more time than it should have. So and right now I think it's also like I try to make decisions faster, something like that.
Nice, that's some real shit, man. Nah, look at that, man. You're a philosopher. See, look at that.
Oh my God.
Nice. What's it? Old school type of, make decisions faster. And something with the cows.
Did you expect a joke or something?
No, I respected some good advice. I mean, look, he's a comedian, so that's why we're dealing with pressures of the funny. We're kind of like, it's too serious. It's too serious. Funny. Where's the funny? Go to punch.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, somehow it also, like, I don't know how is it with your life, right? Like, I feel like I sometimes clearly see the pivotal moments of, like, if I wouldn't go out with the friends to drink beers, like, who went to the comedy school, I maybe would have still be, like, just a full-time office worker, and that's it, And it's just so crazy. Sometimes it blows my mind that how, like, one thing is just completely changes your whole life, and it makes me more philosophically looking at everything, like it's just wow.
They call it a canon event or something.
Canon?
Yeah, something from the Spider-Man's multiverse or something. Sometimes on TikTok. Sorry.
Definitely. That was like, basically I remember that I even didn't want to meet with him. Like, I called another friend, and he's like, yeah, he's actually in town. Why don't you go meet with him? And then I did, and then there's like, whoosh. Like, because of him, I also found my, like, ex-girlfriend, and because of my ex-girlfriend, I found my current girlfriend, like,
wow.
Like,
damn.
all because of the single kind of phone call or whatever.
Damn, so your ex-girlfriend introduced you to your current girlfriend? Oh, look at you. Look, smooth dude. Oh, man, he's like 1 foot out the door, baby. What friends you have?
I might be already friends with my next girlfriend.
There you go. You never know. Canon event. Oh, you never know. Oh shit, that is hilarious. But yeah, that's very important. I mean, we could probably talk here all day, but what I learned from this, man, was just like a lot about Siberian culture. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's just a lot of assumptions you have about Siberia and things, and then I know enough about like how this like Asian population, or I guess Asian descendants from that population in Russia. So that obviously Dinera and well, she's more from
cut this.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry,
she's from Kazakhstan.
Sorry,
so
yeah.
Like we're also kind of very close because of all the Mongolian Genghis Khan, whatever, right? Like this is where the whole thing sort of happened, while they are where they are, but it's a different country, right? Like, so it's not like a region of Russia, actually.
Yeah, so I apologize. I'm pretty sure she's gonna listen to this, and this is on the last podcast that she got to me on this. She was like, really? And I cut that out. I can't cut this one out now. I just gotta look like a dumbass. I apologize for that. But no, thank you very much for sharing your story. Glad to see your stuff, and glad to actually meet you. I think we met at a mic at one point last year or so. And your delivery again was it was funny, and it was just like, wow, where's this? This is so unique in my mind. So it's cool to see that, and then now seeing where you're at now, you had you on a couple of shows as well. So that was dope.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
And guys, thank you very much for listening and or watching. This is your boy Nyan Yenifin, Third Culture Talk Podcast. If you guys listen on Apple, please rate, subscribe. Spotify, rate and subscribe. YouTube, like for us. Hopefully the camera switched this way. There you go. He has a thumb up. Believe me. Hopefully I catch that. But yes, guys, thank you very much for listening to the Third Culture Talk Podcast. I'm your boy, Nyan Yenifin. See you guys in the next one. Peace.
There you go. Wow, that's cool.
Yes.
You you kind of feel like you rehearsed the last couple of stuff.